Hi guys, my name is Puneet and this is Hooray ASP.NET MVC 4 training. In this session we are also going to talk about a project that we are going to teach uh, in the upcoming video series also. So let's get to the point directly. What is MVC basically? Now before coming to that, let us also understand what we had in the past and what do we have now and what is the hype about. We are also going to see a little sort of the architectural pattern of MVC, and also we'll try to compare it with what we had in the past, what can be future modifications and enhancements in MVC, how much do we have and what do we want. Uh, okay, let's get started. Well, that's me. I'm a lead consultant, trainer, a freelancer. I work with some of the big organizations across the country and also with some of the leading training providers in the field of Microsoft technologies. So what is the hype about basically? We have l- heard about this term MVC so many times now that more than anything else it just is, it seems like as if it's just a hype. Let me just give you this clarification on MVC. MVC is not something new. It has been there since a long time. It's just that ASP.NET has not acquired, but it's sort of formulated itself into the whole design pattern of MVC that it follows, and came up with this new idea of ASP.NET MVC, which is not at all related to anything that you've seen till date as far as web development is concerned in the .NET scenario, the complete .NET framework. So what is basically MVC? So if I go back what we had before, so if there's anyone who's coming from a Java background, so it's the Spring MVC. That's exactly what MVC is. So this pretty much tells us now, if you are listening to this video and you're coming from a background which is Java or probably PHP or Ruby on Rails or any framework, this MVC is something that is on top of another framework. Like MVC is on top of ASP.NET, but ASP.NET in itself is a well-formed framework on top of which you have MVC. Now MVC, first of all, let me just clarify, it's an open source technology. Absolutely, it is an open source technology. The source code is available on a lot of websites that are trusted by Microsoft. Some of the Microsoft's own websites will have information about MVC, the licensing and everything, so you can go through that. And that's pretty much something that doesn't really bother a developer. Um, Things that we would require to know MVC, I'll cover that also in the same video. Alright, so what is Microsoft ASP.NET MVC? It's just a way that we have started approaching the solution we want to get. We see a lot of challenges these days, things related to your security on your websites, things related to authentication. It comes in security, but there are a lot of other things also. Now there are major issues with the whole development community in India, especially in Bangalore, because we see a lot of people talking about a lot of openings in MVC, and why all of a sudden ASP.NET is moved into MVC, why every other company is asking for MVC and then ASP.NET, when all our lives we've just worked on ASP.NET. Why on earth are they talking about something that we don't know? And if you think about it in this way, let's say you are a developer uh, who has worked on ASP.NET for 3 years, a C# .NET developer, and now all of a sudden there's this new requirement, this new hype. That's why I call this as hype. that says, okay, you need to know MVC if you need to go forward. If you need to move forward, you need to know MVC. There's a new work, there's some new work coming from one client, and they want the developer but, to know MVC, and so that's how it goes. Like, people get confused. Why is it so? Now, basically, if someone asks me, like a lot of students, they ask me, is it really necessary to know ASP.NET MVC? Now, I tell them it all depends upon what you perceive in your career, what you want out of it. If your company is wanting you to know MVC, then most certainly, if you want to stick with that employer, then definitely you need to know MVC. Otherwise, if you ask me, there's really no need to learn this. Now, a lot of people also, maybe most of you listening to this video will be of the category which comprises of people who are looking out for better opportunities. It's a very well understood fact that a lot of people are looking for better opportunities, and we are pretty much open about it. But what to do, where to start from? Now, come the discussion comes to the point of where do we start from scratch, or do you need to know some prerequisites, or how is it? Now, basically, you don't need to know much in order to learn ASP.NET MVC. Now, if you have some idea about a web technology, how does it work, PHP, ASP, Java, maybe Ruby, maybe, or maybe basic idea about a client-server relationship, I think we are good to go. Also, on top of it, we need an application-driven programming language. C# would be wonderful. VB.NET would also work. Now, the problem with VB.NET, all those people who are coming from VB.NET background, please don't be disheartened. But let me tell you this: a lot of the source code that's written, a lot of should I say, the framework classes inside the source code that is written in C# code. So there's hardly any trace of VB that you'll find in MVC. So, but still, you can code in VB. There's absolutely no problem. A lot of tools where you can get your code converted from VB to C#. That's a different thing altogether. Let's get to the architecture of MVC. Alright, so this is how it pretty much looks. Again, there are a lot of things that will come up instantly the moment you look at this. A lot of questions that come to your mind, right? So again, I'll be talking about a lot of myths, a lot of questions that they generally ask in the interview that doesn't make any sense. Recently, some of my students, they've asked me these series of questions that they were asked in the interview, for which we at Hooray, we have a placement team who help them get these opportunities. So they asked certain questions that that they were not pointed. So questions like, why would you choose a technology which claims to have separation of concerns? So this separation of concerns is one of the most difficult things to understand. That, where is this separation of concerns? I'll get to this, but let me just tell you, in our web forms also, we were following certain strategies. We were following a design pattern. We were following n-tier architecture. So, to put things in a more simpler fashion, let me ask you this: if you were using a technology where your unrelated code was kept at a different place, and at the time of at the runtime, everything comes together, and everything settles down and the application works fine. So if MVC also follows the same thing, why on earth do we need MVC in that case? So let me tell you this. Point one, MVC does not ensure separation of concerns all by itself. There are a lot of things that are inside MVC that participate with each other, which makes it a little different from what web forms were and what MVC is right now. So MVC basically comprises of these three blocks: a model, a view, and a controller. A model would be your it says it contains contains your business logic. Now you know what business logic means. I'm expecting every one of you to know a little about application development so that you understand what a business object is. A business object is something like, s- your classes, your classes, uh, your business layer, what you call your business layer in your entire architecture is what model is in MVC. Let me come to view before coming to the controller. View says it renders content to the user and relays user commands to the controller. Now let me tell you this. View is your HTML and HTML only. Now the .aspx page in ASP.NET web form technology was your view, but there's a major difference here. A view a view in ASP.NET web forms comes with your code behind. It comes with certain events. It comes with certain things that form the fundamental prerequisite of the operational behavior of ASP.NET web form. We don't have any such thing here. So view is something that renders the content of it's all that it does is it just gets some information from the controller that gets the user request, and then the view is supposed to show whatever it shows on the screen. I'll be showing this to you in the video also, in the application, so don't worry about that. Let's move ahead. What else? Okay, so three primary components: a model, view, and a controller. User interaction with the page. What interacts with your application? What interacts with the client? Okay, controller handles the request. So let's say if I say www.facebook.com, so facebook.com is the request sent from the client to the server. Now the moment it goes to the server as an HTTP request, it does not request for a page. Now in web forms we request a page which is .aspx, but in MVC we do not request a page. The request goes to a controller, which is nothing but again a class. We'll just see that in the application what that means. So the controller notifies the model if at all there is any requirement for that, and then the model talks to model doesn't talk to anything. Controller notifies if there's any changes to be made in the model, any database changes, or probably any validation changes, something like that. And then on the basis of that, controller selects a view to be rendered in the browser. Now this is the anatomy of a request. How do you actually render a page in the browser? Now basically this is what we do. The user is going to request a page, so that will be an HTTP request. HTTP request goes to the controller. The controller is going to take that request and is going to find the right view. Now that is the beauty of an MVC application. It knows what to do, when to do, how to do at the right time. So a controller is going to handle a request, and with that request it is going to render the correct page. Now how is it going to do that? We'll not talk about that right now. So we'll just be talking about the basic fundamental things, sort of a theory session, should I say. So the controller will take the HTTP request, will look for the view which is being requested. Now you will ask, can HTTP request directly not be sent to the view and get the response back? Now this was pretty much what was happening in the web forms. That is where the problem is. Now if I don't know how many of you are coming from the old school but I am one of them. So we had something called the classic ASP. to a lot of people it will not make sense, but to some it would. So classic ASP was a real nightmare to a lot of developers, people who know that will remember the nightmare of opening a page with code mixed with HTML and JavaScript. Even the smallest page was a pain to figure out what the hell was going on. So ASP.NET, later on it came in and we thought probably everything is going to be okay now. But again, it had a lot of issues, right? There's again this problem of separation of concerns, which is not completely dealt with, should I say. I mean, I'm not taking this up to Bill Gates and asking him why did you lie. I mean, no one lied basically, but it's just you want to modify things. It's a beautiful thing to work. ASP.NET Web Forms are wonderful to work. Even today we can get the same solution, but how efficiently can you get the solution is the question. So let's get back to the anatomy of a request. So it's the request that matters a lot, because there's something called as a routing engine that we're going to talk about in MVC when we look at the project. Okay, it says it's the newest web development framework, which it most certainly is. It started with MVC 2, 3, and then 4. We have the upcoming framework also, but I'll not talk about that. There's some theory within it. So what is the difference between MVC and Web Forms application? Now, ASP.NET Web Forms, they were okay to the extent where HTTP request and response was the same with any other application. So what was so great about Web Forms? The great thing about Web Forms was that they brought about this new feature called view state. Now every control had a view state, the page had a view state, everything had a view state. So it came in as a new thing. Now with MVC, let me give you the shock. There is no view state, there is no page lifecycle, there is no page event, there's no such thing. So basically this would give you a little idea about how they are going to actually deal with things, because if you don't have any such thing, what I just mentioned, then you would possibly imagine that it will be a little difficult for people who are coming from ASP.NET background to work in MVC. Now that is again a myth. If someone is coming from the ASP.NET background, it's going to be absolutely easy for those people to go about it. Now let me just show you something in the application so that it becomes a little more clear. So we are in our VS 210 and alright, so we have this as my solution, and the solution is called Ode to Food, which is the project that we are going to talk about. And also it's not completely done. There are a lot of modification that my current batch is doing. I'm writing the documentation, there's a lot of script to be written, there's a lot of development work to be done. And there's another thing I would like to show you, which is when you create an app. Okay, let me just create another application for you. So I'll just create another application, and now this app that I'm going to create will probably give you a little heads up about things that are a little different from what they were in ASP.NET Web Forms. So I'm selecting this, so I'll call this my MVC demo. Okay, name good enough. So okay, it's already existing, that's fine. We'll call it demo 4. Hooray. Alright, so that works. Alright, so we'll create this is pretty much self-explanatory. If I say internet application, it is going to add a lot of boilerplate code, which I don't want right now. I'll start with a empty scratch website. So but I have this option here, create a unit test project. So if I select this, it's going to add a unit test project. Now there's this test driven development, which is another big hype. What is TDD? Is TDD a part of MVC? Was it a part of MVC before? Is it a part of MVC now? How good is that? And do we need to know something for that? Do we need to be good at testing and all that? No. Let's get rid of all those questions. Let's just add this for a moment, and I'll show you what basically do we have in the app. So in my app, all that I have are these folders. So we have a controllers folder, we have a models folder, we have a views folder. Now we have these folders. Apart from that, I also have another project called a test project. So my solution has two projects, which is pretty much understood because we created two projects. So we have this controllers, models and view folder. Now we'll just get into this. Now I would not want to go further with this, but before I show you anything that might take the limelight from the whole presentation that I just did, let me just show you something. Right now there's nothing in these folders. Let me just go to the actual project that we are going to do in the class. Now I'll show you this view. Now view has these folders which go by the names of the controllers that we have stored. The account controller, the cuisine controller, the home controller, the restaurant controller, the reviews controller. And then for all those controllers we have separate folders, and in each folder we have these views. All these views correspond, or should I say they are analogous to the web forms that we had in ASP.NET Web Forms. So let's get back to this. Okay, so what are the differences between MVC and web form applications? Now a lot of things that we have seen in ASP.NET which makes it difficult to work has completely changed in MVC, and it makes it 10 times easier to work in MVC as compared to working in ASP.NET. Now another important point that I want to just clarify here. We have this idea of a view, and the view contains only and only HTML. Now it can contain C# code also, but we are going to write a lot of HTML, but the HTML that we are going to write will not be in the form of HTML only, right? So we are going to write some C# code which is going to generate HTML for us, due to which we have more control over HTML. So if I'm going to jot down, probably in the coming series I'll be every day I'll be uploading some videos. So we have a lot of control over the rendered HTML. We have a clean separation of concern. Now test driven development already we've discussed. Now there's quite a bit ease of usage of your JavaScript libraries that you can your JavaScript frameworks that you can use in MVC. And apart from that, you have the stateless nature of the web, which makes it so easy for SEO to work more efficiently. So people who are into a lot of search engine optimization thing, for them it will make a lot of sense, because these days a lot of business driven websites, they need to be optimized enough. So when they're optimized, they're called SEO friendly. So an MVC application by default is SEO friendly. And what else? There's no view state, there's no post back events. Now apart from that, I do not want to say at any point that MVC takes away the cake and ASP.NET is just like a beggar. No, it is not. ASP.NET is going to be there for years to come. But let me tell you this, they're both good choices basically, right? Neither of the web frameworks are to be replaced by the other, nor are there any plans to have them merged into a single framework. Now I don't have a confirmation from Microsoft, and neither do I have a direct line to Bill Gates to ask him whether that is the case. So, but I can tell you that there's continued support and development which is done in parallel by Microsoft, and neither will be going away. Neither means neither your web forms nor your MVC. Now, each of these web frameworks offer advantages and disadvantages, some of which need to be considered when developing a web application. Now, it can be developed with the either technology. It might make development for a particular application easier selecting one over the other. Now, ASP.NET Web Forms, we just spoke about a lot of things, but there's another thing I want to just talk about, which can be an important thing if you're going for interviews, which is also known as rapid application development approach. Now, this is the ability to just jump in and start delivering web forms, a lot of web form here, web form there, everywhere. Now, this is disputed by some of the MVC community people, that it's a bad thing, but in the end it comes down to the level of expertise of the developer and what they are comfortable with. The web forms model probably has less of a learning curve to experienced developers, so I mean it restricts a developers, the whole thing becomes a little tied up kind of thing. So but there's a major advantage also. You have a larger control toolbox, a lot of controls, controls in your you have these server controls, but we don't have those controls in MVC. But still, I mean, it is if you want to ask me, the only advantage that I favor the most for web forms would be the maturity level. Your framework, your web form, ASP.NET web forms are way more mature. They've been there since 2002, and there's an abundant information with regards to the questions and problems and the third-party controls and the toolkits and the support. There are a lot of things. So the community is really mature. MVC, on the other hand, is really young. But still, we have to start at some point. So with MVC, it works well with developers who need a high degree of control on their HTML. Many controls in ASP.NET Web Forms automatically generate a lot of raw HTML, which we see when a page is rendered. Now this causes a lot of headaches for developers. With MVC, it lends itself better towards having complete control with what is rendered, and there are no surprises. Even more important is that the HTML forms typically are much smaller than the web forms, which can equate to a performance boost sometimes, and especially for people who go for SEOs. Now, I would not be talking a lot about SEOs, but from the performance standpoint, and also when we are going to do the application, I'll show you certain things with sort of optimization that we do in your web forms, which is a lot more easier than what we do in MVC. Now, let's get back to some. So it says MVC is going to serve methods, not files. So there's a huge difference there. Now, the first file request is a request for your ASPX page, which is your ASP.NET Web Form technology. So the second one is called a method request. Now, we don't know what a method request is, but let me tell you this. Let me just show it to you in that application quickly, that what is going to happen if I start with this. Let me go back quickly and show you something here. Alright, so we have a controller that interacts with model to create data for the view, but controller is the entry point to the whole thing, right? So if controller is the entry point, let's create a controller here. We call the controller as let's say we call it home controller, and template, we don't want a template. Well, there are certain things that I have missed, which I'll talk about later, since this is just a small demo and also about the project that I was talking about. this is just to tell a lot of people in the ASP.NET community that we at Hooray are very focused on the approach that follows through a project scheme. So we want to look at a project, we want to write some documentation, get the requirement, write a user story, write some UML, get some requirements, write the database, write the script here, there, everywhere, put it together, build some teams, have some nice interaction, talk to certain business houses, and just see whether the thing is sellable. Right? We don't want to get a lot of business out of it, but if we do, what the hell? We want to we want our website, our MVC website, to drive some business. Also, you people get a real-time advantage of learning a real-time application. Alright, so there is a method in this controller called as action result. Now, I could not possibly teach you what action result is right now, but later on definitely we are going to talk about what the return type of this method is going to be. Now, since I said a controller is going to take the request and it's going to render what it renders, right? So let me just tell you something like this. Now the return type of this should be something which is, which is matching the return type here. Now I'm going to say something like this, that this method is just going to bring back some content, nothing serious, but some content. Content is some little simple text. So I'll just say this is my first, a little typo, this is my first MVC class. Alright, that should be okay. Now this method is bringing back the string here. Alright, so if I'm just going to show you what it actually does, it is basically bringing back this string. So I'm going to run this, I'm going to expect something to happen. So I'll say build my solution and run the app. Alright, so this is running on my local development server. So basically, if I just go back and see what we learned, the controller was going to take the request, which is pretty much the case. So controller took the request, and controller's method, which is also known as an action method, basically the controller, the action method, and the request. So the request is going to route to the controller, which is going to route to the action method, which is going to route to a view. Now here it is not a view. If I go back to what it was before, it was just a view. So it is actually returning a view. But let me keep it what it is. So let me keep it like this for a moment. Let me show you something. So another thing was the file request. The file request is like this. First you have your domain, whatever it is, and the forward slash. After the forward slash, it's the controller's name. The controller is the home controller, right? Now here it doesn't say anything, but let me put it anyway. So first is the home controller, and the second thing that it is wanting is the action method. So it says maps to the details action method of the home controller with ID item ID of 5. We'll not talk about that right now, what the ID is. Let me just show you something like this. Go back here, put in index, because it's the index action method that is getting back this line of text. Enter, so it gets me that again. Now how does this know? Let's say if I have another method, I want to say index, let's say get some sleep. I'm thinking of sleep right now. because this is pretty late in the night. It's probably the morning. If I could show you the time, it's 5 in the morning. So right, so this says this is almost the time to go to bed. Fine. So this action method is a part of the same controller, which is home. Now this is a convention. This word controller is mandatory to be written with the home controller. We'll talk about a lot of conventions and configurations later. Let me just build the solution again and run. Wait, let me run that again. Okay, it was already running. We'll probably just use that. Alright, so I'll just put a forward slash. Now instead of index this time, this is get some sleep. Okay, so it gives me what I want. But if I just want to run this the way it is, I'll still get the default index action method. Now that's again there's a lot of configuration and convention that we need to understand with regards to MVC. Now there's this folder called app start. I will just show you the thing that you want to know right now, but later on we'll just see everything that is to be known. So basically it has this default map route method which defaults the controller to home and action method to index. Now if I want that method get some sleep to be my default method, so instead of the action method, which I just told you is the name of the all these methods actually inside my controller are called action methods. So instead of that, I'll just put it here, get some sleep, just build the solution. Now if I run my app without manually redirecting to that action method, I will go to that anyways. So I'll just build the solution, run the app, and I'm expecting to go to that action method this time. Alright, so it pretty much does what it does. So I'll just again go to my home index. So it gives me that. Fine, if I go back, but let me tell you something. This is something that we don't do at all. We don't want to do something like this. We always want to return a view. So how do we get a view? Now I would not have shown you all this, but I felt the urge of showing you because I did not want to just stop with the theory part. Wanted to show you something that really makes sense, so that in the upcoming sessions we are going to talk about a lot of things. But I am not going to put a lot of project related thing here. For the project you have to come to the class if you feel so, but with the knowledge that we are going to get in the projects, with the knowledge that we are going to get by manually customizing a lot of code in MVC, we will definitely be learning a lot of new things. So the last part which I want to show you today would just be how to create a view and what does a view contain basically. Now this is my view folder. Now that's again a convention, which is that if this index method is going to call a view and not the content, which was this, so this time we don't want to call this content. What we basically want to call is nothing but a view. So we want to call a view, the name of the view. Okay, first of all let me just tell you, we add a view like this. We want to have a view. For this action method we say add a view, so it says what's the view engine. So we have a razor and our very old friend ASPX. We don't want ASPX, we want razor this time. We can go for ASPX pretty much. We'll have razor, and let me give you the shock. There's no server control, guys. We don't have server controls. Now we could add server controls, but that will totally, absolutely be against what MVC talks about. So let us not do anything that is against the protocols of MVC. We'll talk about that later, why we cannot have it. Well, let's just what do we want to do with this? Well, let's just put anything. we'll say an H3 maybe. We'll say okay, this is almost the time to go to bed now. Go to bed now. Let's go to bed. Okay, so basically what we are doing in this view is writing some HTML. But let me tell you this, we never write HTML like this. We should never do something like this. Why, when, how, all the questions, we'll talk about questions later, but we try our level best not to put any containers, especially stuff inside the containers as in the form of raw HTML. We want to write some method which will generate HTML for us. So this one also contains, this is CSHTML and not HTML, so this can have C# and HTML code both. So in the same line, if I want to just say let's go to bed, as if my father is telling me to go to bed now. So let's go to bed. It's time to, it's the time. Okay, how do we put the time here? We'll write some C# code here, and the way we switch between the C# code and your HTML is by putting this @ sign. So we'll say datetime dot now, which is a static method. Put this datetime dot now. We can do a lot of things to it. We'll talk about views later. I mean, this is not about views, this is not even about controllers, it's just a basic thing. I'm just going to build the solution and request the page. Okay, what's the wrong 404? Okay, we are requesting the wrong action method, so we want index, not the other one. Okay, so let's go to bed. It's this date and 6 AM in the morning, so I get up early, I sleep early. That's the way it should be for all the MVC developers. Alright then, have a great time. This was all for today. We'll talk about MVC projects, we'll talk about a lot of MVC stuff later. Have a great day. Bye bye.